At her husband's funeral, Diana Williams faced the ultimate betrayal. Her in-laws, dripping with scorn, seized the thriving businesses she and her late husband had built together, and in their cruelty, tossed her nothing but a rusted, broken-down van as her inheritance. Their mocking laughter echoed as they cast her out, leaving her 8 months pregnant, clutching the hand of her 10-year-old son, and forced to make the van, dismissed as worthless, their only refuge. But then, one quiet morning as dawn's golden light pierced the mist and struck the van's battered frame, Diana noticed something no one else had, a faint shimmer hidden beneath the rust. That spark, buried in decay, was about to unravel a secret that would transform her humiliation into unimaginable triumph. Before we reveal what Diana discovered, and how it turned her darkest hour into a legacy her in-laws never saw coming, hit that subscribe button. Let us know where you are watching from in the comment. Stay with us until the end, because the truth behind that van will leave you stunned. The priest's voice droned on, solemn words about eternal rest rising and falling like waves Diana could barely hear. Her mind drifted, each phrase drowned by the weight pressing on her chest. She held her son closer, willing herself to stand tall while the earth swallowed the man who had been her partner, her anchor, her one true ally in a world determined to keep her in the shadows. When the final shovel of dirt struck the casket, a cruel sound like thunder in her heart, Diana felt a ripple in the crowd. It wasn't grief. It was expectation. Eyes lingered on her swollen belly, her trembling son, the fragile umbrella shielding them both. Whispers curled tighter around her, like snakes tightening their coils. They were waiting for her to fall apart. Her gaze returned to her husband's family. Their posture was rigid, their hands folded neatly, but their eyes, cold, sharp, betrayed something darker than mourning. They weren't simply burying a son, a brother. They were burying the last barrier standing between Diana and the hunger in their ambition. In that moment, Diana understood, this wasn't just the end of a chapter in her life. It was the beginning of a battle she had never asked for, but one she could not afford to lose. By the time the last shovel of earth landed with a hollow thud on the coffin, Diana's shoes were soaked through, the damp seeping into her bones like an unwelcome intruder. Weariness tugged at her, but she forced herself upright, clinging to a fragile thread of hope. Her husband's will would protect her children's future. The next day, June 13, 2024, she sat in a lawyer's office, where the polished mahogany and the faint, musty scent of old paper offered a fleeting illusion of safety. Martins pressed close at her side, his small hand warm in hers, steadying her as the lawyer opened a leather-bound folder. His voice, formal yet steady, carried her husband's final words. To my wife, Diana Williams, I leave our home at 42 Willow Lane, all my shares in Williams Floral and Design, and the 1973 van. Relief swept over her like a tide. The house. The business. And yes, even the old van. Her husband had clung to it with a peculiar fondness, as though it guarded secrets only he understood. For the first time since the burial, Diana's shoulders eased. Then came the laugh, sharp, mocking, cutting through the air like a knife. Her sister-in-law leaned back with a smirk. Oh no, that's not how this works. A smug glance passed between her and her brother. Diana's breath caught. Excuse me? Her father-in-law leaned forward, his tone colder than the rain outside. The house and the business belong to the family. You married into it, Diana, you don't own it. The van's all you get. Be grateful we're even letting you have that. The lawyer frowned, flipping through the pages again. That's not what's written. Enough, the older man snapped, his voice laced with disdain. You want to challenge us? Then take it to court. Let's see how far you get, pregnant and penniless. Martin's grip tightened, his little hand trembling in hers. Diana felt the room spin, the stale tang of coffee and paper mingling with the nausea rising in her throat. Every instinct screamed at her to fight, but not here, not on their terms. She knew too well how ruthless they could be, how easily their money and influence could bend the world. 15 minutes later, she was standing in the drizzle outside, clutching only a set of van keys while her in-laws' laughter trailed after her like poison in the air. Martins walked beside her, glancing up with wide, pleading eyes as though waiting for her to say this was all a mistake, a nightmare they'd soon wake from. She stayed silent, each step heavier than the last, until her hand brushed the van's corroded panel. Rust flaked away like dead skin, and the acrid smell of rain mixed with old oil hung in the air. This was her inheritance. The van slumped under a leaning lamppost, paint bubbled with rust, one back door sagging like a weary limb, the driver's mirror barely clinging on with frayed duct tape. When she pulled open the door, a stale wave hit her, oil, mildew, and metallic neglect stinging her nostrils. Martins climbed in first, running his fingers across the cracked vinyl seats as though they might reveal a hidden map to a better life. "Mom, we're not really living here, are we?" His voice was soft, hopeful, desperate. Diana didn't answer right away. She placed the keys in the cup holder, her gaze fixed on the dusty dashboard where faint fingerprints, her husband's, still lingered. Each smudge was an echo of him, a whisper of the man who once tinkered here. The sight pierced her with grief, but beneath the ache, something stronger stirred, a spark of defiance, fierce and unyielding. If this van was all they had left her, then she would make it more than enough. That night, June 13, 2024, the van became their refuge in the shadows of an empty lot behind a shuttered hardware store. The low hum of streetlights mingled with the distant rush of traffic, a lonely lullaby for a world that had cast them out. Diana wrapped Martins in a worn blanket, tucking it tightly around his frail shoulders, her fingers lingering as if by touch alone she could shield him from the cruelty pressing in on them. She lowered herself onto the narrow bench seat at the back, every movement clumsy under the weight of her swollen belly. Discomfort gnawed at her, but she ignored it. The van, at least, kept the rain at bay, a fragile haven in the storm. Yet safety was an illusion. Shadows drifted across the windows, voices slithering in with the night. "That's the Williams widow, isn't it? Yeah. Lost everything. In-laws took it all. Always thought she was too proud. Guess she'll be begging soon." Each word struck like a lash. Diana clenched her jaw, staring up at the van's sagging ceiling as her heart thundered between fury and resolve. Then, like a reply to the venom outside, her unborn child kicked, a pulse of life inside her whispering its command, "You don't have time to break." By dawn on June 14th, the cold roused her, breath rising in faint clouds within the van's damp interior. She rummaged through the small suitcase salvaged from the house, pulling on a sweater with frayed cuffs, its worn texture the only comfort left from a stolen life. Martin still slept, curled tight against the chill, his brow furrowed even in dreams. Diana kissed his forehead, her lips lingering, before stepping into the gray morning. No house. No business. No safety net. Only a rusted van, and a fire inside her that refused to die. She had no idea then. The van's weathered shell guarded secrets far greater than anyone could imagine, a hidden promise waiting for her hands to uncover it. Days blurred into survival. Each morning, Diana walked to the corner store for day-old bread, its hard crust a small victory to share with Martins. She scanned bulletin boards for scraps of work, cleaning, hauling, arranging flowers for loose change, her body aching but her resolve unshaken. The van became their fragile cocoon, a sanctuary born of desperation. Martins pressed his tiny fingers against the fogged window, drawing stick figures holding hands, silent prayers etched in condensation, sketches of a hope he refused to let go. Diana busied herself wiping down the van's interior, rearranging boxes, trying to transform cold steel into something her children could call home. Then came June 17, 2024. She was scrubbing near the back door, her sponge rasping against a stubborn patch of rust, when it snagged. Frowning, she dug at the spot. Rust flaked away beneath her touch, and what glimmered beneath was not dull steel. It was different, denser, smooth. The color caught the pale morning light, shimmering with an unmistakable warmth. Her breath hitched. She pressed her thumb harder, widening the sliver, watching as the glow deepened until it seemed to pulse in the light. This wasn't paint. It wasn't accident. This was something hidden, something placed. Her husband's words echoed back with haunting clarity, "That van's our safety net." She had thought it sentimentality. Now she understood, It was foresight. The van carried more than rust and ruin. It carried his plan. His protection. Their future. Diana pressed her palm flat against the panel, her heart thundering. The revelation didn't erupt in wild joy. It settled in her chest like the weight of destiny, heavy, undeniable. She swept the fallen rust into her palm and whispered to herself, "Not yet." Because this was no ordinary discovery. It was a secret. And secrets, when guarded with patience, could become the sharpest weapon of all. Diana moved with careful precision, masking her triumph behind steady hands and quiet resolve. The gold was her salvation, but also her most dangerous secret, its invisibility her greatest shield. On June 22, 2024, she worked the rear door's interior with patient fingers, prying free a narrow strip small enough to slip into her coat pocket. Her hands never trembled, though the weight of what she held could change everything. That evening, she sold it to a discreet jeweler across town, a man whose eyes betrayed silent recognition but whose lips asked no questions. The money, more than she had earned in months, was life itself. Fresh clothes for Martins. Prenatal vitamins. Enough food to silence the growl of hunger and spare them the humiliation of rationing. By July 1, 2024, another sale fueled something greater, the rebirth of her flower shop, this time as a modest stall tucked in the corner of a quiet street market. Second-hand vases. Wholesale flowers. Her hands rediscovered their rhythm, weaving colors into bouquets that spoke where words could not. Each arrangement was more than a product. It was a defiance, a bloom of rebellion against despair. Bright petals cut through the gray of her circumstances, and passers-by began to notice. On July 5, 2024, whispers rippled through the market, "Who's this new florist? She's got a gift." Another voice replied, "That's the Williams widow, isn't it? Thought she was living in a van." The gossip no longer stung, it ignited her. Each word fed the fire in her chest. She rose before dawn, worked long after dusk, pouring every spare coin back into her craft. Finer blossoms, sharper tools, more dazzling displays that drew eyes, hearts, and loyalty. Meanwhile, the van remained under its leaning lamppost, its rusted frame concealing not ruin but fortune, a silent sentinel guarding her secret. Across town, her in-laws' empire rotted from the inside. Williams' Floral and Design, the business they'd stolen from her, crumbled under their arrogance and ineptitude. Orders went unfulfilled, debts spread like infection, and rumors of collapse raced through the city. On July 10, 2024, customers at Diana's stall whispered over her bouquets, "Heard the Williams family can't even pay their suppliers." No surprise, they never worked a day for it. Diana remained silent, arranging lilies and roses with steady hands, the fragrance masking the quiet satisfaction blooming within her. She understood now, gold wasn't the only treasure that grew in silence. Power did too, rooted in patience, watered by resilience, and sharpened by survival. By August 3, 2024, as her newborn daughter's cry filled the Vanter nursery, Diana's humble stall had blossomed into a corner shop kissed by sunlight. A green awning stretched proudly above the door, its name painted in gold script, Martins and Rose, a tender tribute to the two lives that gave her strength. The air inside was rich with lilies, peonies, and eucalyptus, a fragrance that wrapped every visitor in warmth. People came not just for flowers, but for the way Diana made them feel, remembered, valued, cared for. She tucked a sprig of baby's breath into every bouquet, a blessing disguised as a detail, and in doing so, she built a haven of love and loyalty. Meanwhile, her in-laws' downfall was no longer whispered gossip, it was front-page news. By August 15, 2024, headlines screamed, "Williams Floral Chain declares bankruptcy." Williams family estate listed for urgent sale. Diana read the words with no gloating smile, only a calm, steady sense of justice. The empire they had stolen was ash now, reduced to rubble by their own greed. And she, the widow they cast out with nothing but a rusted van, was quietly rising from the ruins. On August 20, 2024, as Diana wrapped a bouquet for a young bride, the shop door creaked open, its bell jingling softly. Her father-in-law entered, gaunt and diminished, his suit frayed at the elbows, a shadow of the man who'd once loomed over her. Her sister-in-law trailed behind, her once haughty demeanor replaced by a hollow unease, her eyes darting nervously. "Diana," he began, his voice quieter than she'd ever heard, stripped of its former venom. "We've hit a rough patch. The house is gone, the business too. We need a place to stay, just until—" Diana's hands stayed busy, tucking eucalyptus into the bouquet, the soft leaves brushing her fingertips like a whispered reminder of her strength. She didn't look up until the ribbon was tied. "It's not precise and final." "I remember," she said at last, her voice steady, resonant with quiet power. "The day you said the van was all I deserved, that my children and I were worth nothing." She met their eyes, not with anger, but with the measured calm she used to choose which flowers to trim and which to nurture, a calm forged in hardship and triumph. Her sister-in-law's gaze flicked to the shop's gold-lettered sign, then to the gold-plated pen Diana used for receipts, its gleam a silent accusation. A flicker of realization crossed her face, sharp and fleeting. Diana slid the bouquet to the bride, her movements graceful despite the weight of the moment. "I'm afraid I don't have room," she said, soft but unyielding, her words carrying the strength of a woman rebuilt. "Some things are too small to bear the weight of those who tried to crush them." They left without a word, the door's bell chiming like a final note, crisp and conclusive. Diana exhaled, tasting not revenge, but the sweet, unshackable clarity of freedom. Evening light flooded the shop, bathing the petals in warm gold, their colors glowing like a promise kept. Diana sat at the counter, her newborn daughter sleeping in a woven basket beside her, her soft breaths a gentle rhythm. Martin sketched in a notebook nearby, his pencil scratching softly, his drawings now brighter, filled with hope. Through the window, the van stood in its familiar spot, rusted, silent, unremarkable. No passerby would suspect it had changed everything. The gold had given her a lifeline, true, but it was her choices, to persevere, to work when despair beckoned, to transform bitterness into beauty, that built this life. Diana often thought of her husband, picturing him in the shop's doorway, arms folded, his quiet pride shining in his eyes like the gold he'd hidden for her. He'd known the van's secret, had left her the one thing her in-laws could never claim, a legacy of love and foresight. Diana brushed a stray petal from the counter, inhaling the shop's sweet, green air, its fragrance a blend of life and possibility. She didn't need the mansion, the stolen businesses, or the family name. Her roots were deep now, forged by her own hands, unshakable, grounded in the life she'd built for her children. When customers asked about the old van, she'd smile, her eyes crinkling with quiet wisdom, and say, "It's just part of the story." Because the truth was this: gold could hide in the ugliest places, and those who scorn your worth often hand you the key to your freedom without knowing it. If Diana's journey moved you as it did me, don't just scroll away. Hit that like button, subscribe, and share this story with someone who needs to know that even in rust and ruin, there's gold waiting to be found. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done in her shoes? Let us know in the comment.